All right, I'm picking up my friend and we're headed to Acadia National Park with 5 dog trainers and we're all going to hang out. I was hoping to open this video with a beautiful sunrise on Cadillac Mountain, the first place the light touches in the United States. But instead, I had to start with this. It's a video of my friends and I trying our hardest to retrieve my iPhone down a sewer grate just minutes after watching the sunrise atop Cadillac Mountain, and right before the first hike of the day. The park ranger was honestly surprised that we were able to lift the sewer grate off ourselves because it was so darn heavy. But we're dog trainers, we're strong, and we improvise. Ultimately, we tried our hardest, but could not retrieve the phone. RIP iPhone. So with the help of my friends, I was still able to gather the footage needed to show you this absolutely epic place to adventure with your dog, Acadia National Park. Acadia is located in Maine and is one of the few dog-friendly national parks in the United States. Officially becoming a national park in January of 1929, it sees 4 million visitors a year, which makes it a top 10 in the country for visitors, and is New England's only national park. There are 100 miles of hiking trails and 45 miles of carriage roads in the park where pets are permitted. I'm going to drop a link down in the description below with more specifics on trails that are open to dogs, as well as those that are closed, which are actually few and far between, as well as the times of year the various beaches are open to dogs. No matter the time of year or the trail you're on, dogs must be kept on leash within the park to protect native flora and fauna. While Cool Whip is a service dog, I've also been here with Jake, my pet dog. Being able to let Cool Whip let her hair down and have some fun in the park is just a joy when most of the other national parks require her to stay on her best service dog behavior when we're visiting. Time of year. I've been to Acadia twice with dogs, once in the fall and this year in early May. Both are awesome times to visit with dogs as it's not too hot and it's not too crowded. On this year's trip, we were able to get here while the beaches were still open to dogs, which I highly recommend doing as some beaches are human only during peak season.
It said no dogs June 15th to September 8th, that's all it said.
In fact, the park was so empty that Echo Lake was deserted when we first got there, just an hour or so after lunch, and we had the place all to ourselves. Planning for a national park trip with your dog. During this trip, we picked a lot of our destinations with one of my favorite national parks books, which I'll link down below. It gives a good guide to the hikes, how strenuous they are, along with don't miss attractions and activities in the park. I use it to plan all of my national park adventures. I also check out bringfido.com where I can both check out the hikes that dogs are allowed on, as well as different activities and restaurants that are dog friendly. With a 6-hour drive up, we ended up hanging out at the house we rented and letting the dogs swim the first night. We went to bed early to prepare for our very early morning wake-up call the next morning. Also note that there is dog-friendly camping within the park that I stayed at in my previous trip, which was awesome. There's also cabins, hotels, and camping spots outside the park nearby. But on this trip, we wanted a hot tub and a spot for 5 guide dog trainers and 3 dogs to be able to relax peacefully together after a long day at the park. So we ended up staying a ways away from the park, about an hour. Look, when you're used to driving across the country for a living, an hour really isn't that far. First day at the park. Because we were staying so far from Acadia, to be at the park at a 5:10 sunrise on Cadillac Mountain, we needed to get up around 2 a.m. From May to October, you need a permit to go to Cadillac Mountain, so be sure to secure that before your trip. Fortunately, because it was early May, we were there prior to permitting time, so we just drove up and watched the most beautiful panoramic view of the sunrise. My first sunrise at Acadia was 7 years ago and was absolutely freezing and full of drones before they were banned in the park, which kind of ruined the experience. This moderate temperature with everyone quietly enjoying the sunrise was such a lovely experience. The sun was so beautiful that it looked fake. Soon after, we headed out to hike Jordan Pond. This is when I promptly dropped my phone in the sewer, and because it was 6 a.m. and maintenance wasn't open, we decided to do the hike around Jordan Pond first and then call for maintenance after the hike. This hike is gorgeous, with beautiful views of the pond throughout the whole hike. The water is smooth and clear as glass. About a third of the hike was on planks, which was a fun challenge for the larger dogs. The hike is relatively easy, with only a few spots where you're walking over boulders and rocks, with very little elevation gain and a total distance of just over 3 miles. After the hike, we found a shovel to try again to retrieve the phone. Park rangers got involved, we looked very suspicious, it was a whole thing. But in the end, we abandoned the phone and headed over to the Jordan Pond House. Unfortunately, it wasn't open for the season yet, so no popovers for us. But we did check out the gift shop and head up to the upper level for some breakfast beverages. We then headed over to Bar Island. We had timed the tides just right, totally by accident, to actually be able to do the hike. You have a window from about an hour and a half before and an hour and a half after low tide to make it through the sandbar and up the trail to the top and back down. This was another easy walk with a small amount of elevation gain just near the end.
And hey, if you found this video helpful so far, be sure to go down and boop that like button. It lets me know that you want more content like this in the future and helps others find the channel. Jake, Coolip, and I would be so grateful.
After our second hike of the day and waking up at 2 a.m. to get to the park, we decided to head into town for lunch. Because of the time of year, a lot of the restaurants weren't open for the season yet, so we hit up a restaurant called Route 66 and had some delicious food in a quirky environment. After grilling up some dinner, having some fun, and relaxing back at the house, including trying to keep all the bugs and ticks off of us, we headed to bed and woke up at a more reasonable 6 a.m. to get to the park around 8:30 or 9 the next day. Day 2 in Acadia. We headed to the Park Road Loop to do Ocean Path Trail from Sand Beach to Otter Cliffs, passing Thunder Hole. Unfortunately, we missed the Sand Beach parking lot, which was the first one on the loop, and it's a one-way, so we ended up parking at Otter Cliffs and walking down the 2+ miles to the beach, which actually worked out well since the dogs had the whole 2-mile walk back to dry off after we rinsed the sand off of them. The trail follows the Park Loop Road with constant vistas of the ocean. It's just gorgeous and also shady, which is nice for both humans and dogs as it got later in the day. It is a pretty busy path, especially as you get closer to the beach. On our way, we passed some rock climbers, and then we stopped at Thunder Hole. It was unfortunately closer to low tide, so we didn't experience the full extent of the waves exploding on the rocks, but it was neat to see anyway. We finally made it to the beach, and even midday on a Saturday, it wasn't super crowded, and we were able to hang out with the dogs on the far side of the beach for a while before rinsing them off, using the bathrooms, and giving them a drink at the convenient dog bowl at the bottom of the human water fountain. Note that bathrooms seem a little sparse, especially ones that were open during early May, so plan accordingly and take advantage when you have them. After this hike, we were all pretty tired and sat on the ground in the parking lot and ate our sandwiches. We all knew we weren't going to make it to Echo Lake to eat like we had planned. Once refreshed, we headed over to the lake, which is a swimming lake, mid-May through mid-September, when it also becomes a no-dog zone. Fortunately, those restrictions weren't in place yet, so the dogs were allowed. While the other lakes and ponds are reservoirs for drinking water, Echo Lake is not and is a popular swimming spot. After a quick Google search and no restrictions on the signs, we let the dogs play in the water a little bit as well. We had this secluded beach mostly to ourselves, and the dogs had a blast. After lots of driving, early mornings, and later nights, we decided to head home, but not without first grabbing some ice cream. Because we had stayed a bit outside of the park, we stopped at Ellsworth at Morton Moose for some ice cream. There were some nice picnic tables outside where we could eat with the dogs and could even purchase flights of ice cream so you could try 5 different mini scoops of flavors. They also had doggy pup cups. And with that, we headed back to the house for a little hot tub and fire time, along with games and beverages. It was quite the whirlwind few days at Acadia, and I can't wait to go back and hike and explore even more of this amazingly dog-friendly national park.
If you have questions about Acadia with dogs or have suggestions for my next video, be sure to drop that down in the comments below. And if you love traveling with your dog, you absolutely need to watch this next video, which will give you all of my top tips for traveling with your dog from someone who spent the last 10 years on the road with dogs. Happy travels!